All right, so get it. We're diving into nuclear fusion today.
Wow.
You sent over a stack of articles and research, so I can tell you're really ready to get up to speed on this topic everyone's been talking about.
Yeah.
It's complex, sure, but it can change the world.
Yeah, it really could.
Our mission today is to help you become a fusion whiz.
In no time.
Exactly, in no time, by pulling out the most interesting and important pieces from all this material.
Sounds good.
So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay.
What is nuclear fusion?
Yeah.
And how is it different from nuclear fission, which we hear about more often?
That's a great question.
It is.
Fission is like splitting a heavy atom, like uranium,
Okay,
into smaller pieces.
got it.
Fusion, though, is about joining lighter atoms,
Okay,
specifically isotopes of hydrogen called deuterium and tritium,
interesting.
to form helium, and a ton of energy gets released in that process.
So it's like the opposite of fission.
Exactly.
This is what happens in our sun, right? It's basically a giant fusion reactor.
Exactly. The sun is constantly fusing hydrogen into helium, showering us with energy.
So cool.
Yeah, and that energy comes from what we call binding energy.
Binding energy.
Basically, the helium nucleus created through fusion is more tightly bound together
Okay,
than the original hydrogen isotopes were.
I see.
That difference in binding energy is released as the energy we're after.
Okay, binding energy. I'll admit that sounds a bit abstract.
Sure.
Is there a way to picture it?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
If you bring two magnets close enough together, they snap together, right?
Right.
That snap is a release of energy because the magnets are now in a lower, more stable energy state.
Ah, okay.
Similarly, when atomic nuclei fuse, they're forming a more stable state.
I'm with you.
And that transition releases energy.
That makes more sense.
Good.
It's all about achieving a lower energy state, and that excess energy is what we could use.
Right.
Now, what I find really exciting is where we find this fusion fuel. We're not talking about digging up uranium mines here, are we?
Not at all. One of the primary fuels, deuterium, is abundantly available in seawater.
No way.
Can you believe that the ocean could be our future energy source?
You know, I've read about this before,
Yeah.
but it still blows my mind every time.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a sci-fi novel.
It is pretty wild.
But how do we actually get the deuterium out of the water?
So there are a couple of ways.
Okay.
Electrolysis, which uses electricity to split water molecules,
Uh-huh.
and distillation, which separates substances based on their boiling points.
Interesting.
These methods can be used to isolate the deuterium we need for fusion.
Wow. So we potentially have this almost limitless fuel source just floating around in our oceans.
We do.
But I'm guessing it's not as simple as just scooping up some seawater and throwing it into a reactor, right?
Yeah, right.
I had a feeling.
To get those nuclei to fuse,
Yeah.
we need to recreate the extreme conditions found in the sun's core.
Okay.
Incredibly high temperatures and pressures.
This is where it gets really wild.
It does.
How hot are we talking?
Much hotter than your coffee.
Oh, I was going to say hotter than my coffee on a Monday morning.
We need to reach millions, even billions of degrees Celsius.
Wow.
At those temperatures, we're not dealing with regular gas anymore. We're
Wow.
talking about plasma.
Plasma.
That's a hot ionized gas where electrons are stripped from atoms,
Okay.
allowing the nuclei to move freely and collide with enough energy to overcome their natural repulsion and fuse.
So basically, we're trying to create a mini sun here on Earth.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you think we'll need SPF 1000 sunscreen for that?
Uh-huh.
Just kidding.
Uh-huh.
But seriously, controlling something that hot has to be a huge challenge, right?
You're absolutely right. Containment is one of the biggest hurdles.
Yeah.
Stars use immense gravitational pressure to confine their plasma,
Uh-huh.
but we need other approaches.
Right.
Your sources focus on two main methods being explored:
Okay.
magnetic confinement and inertial confinement.
Let's break those down. Starting with magnetic confinement fusion.
Right.
That's the one with those giant donut-shaped reactors, right?
Exactly. Those are called tokamaks.
Tokamaks.
And they use incredibly powerful magnets to contain the hot plasma in that toroidal or donut shape,
Right.
preventing it from coming into contact with the reactor wall.
I remember seeing pictures of these tokamaks.
Yeah.
They're absolutely massive.
They are.
And I know ITER, the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor,
Yeah.
is one of the biggest ones being built, right?
Yes, ITER is a massive international collaboration
Wow.
aimed at demonstrating the feasibility of fusion power using a tokamak.
So cool.
They're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with this technology.
That's amazing.
There are other variations too, like stellarators,
Stellarators.
which use twisted magnetic fields for confinement.
Huh, interesting.
Think of it like trying to hold a basketball with your hands
Okay.
versus holding it with a complicated web of strings. Accelerators are more complex, but they might solve some of the stability issues we see in tokamaks.
Wow, it's incredible to think about the scale of these projects and the level of international cooperation involved.
It is.
Okay, so we've got these massive magnetic donuts wrangling superheated plasma.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
What about inertial confinement fusion?
So inertial confinement fusion, or ICF, uses a completely different approach.
Okay.
Instead of magnets, it relies on extremely powerful pulses of energy,
Wow.
either lasers or ion beams, to compress and heat tiny fuel pellets,
So tiny.
like creating a miniature star just for a split second.
Like a tiny controlled supernova.
You got it.
And I know you included some information about the National Ignition Facility, or NUF,
Yes.
which recently achieved a major breakthrough using this method, right?
Absolutely. NUF used lasers to achieve something incredible.
What was that?
They produced more energy from the fusion reaction
Yeah.
than the laser energy used to trigger it.
That's amazing.
It's a huge step towards practical fusion energy. But it's also important to remember that this was a very short burst of energy.
Right.
We still have a long way to go in terms of sustaining those reactions.
It's still mind-blowing.
It is.
Both of these approaches, while very different, are making exciting progress.
For sure.
This makes me wonder, why are we putting so much effort into fusion?
Yeah,
What's the big picture here?
it's a good question.
Why should you, our listener, care about this?
That's a great question, and one that your sources answer quite clearly.
Okay.
Fusion has the potential to revolutionize energy production,
Wow.
offering a range of benefits that are difficult to ignore.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Great.
Let's talk about what a fusion-powered future could look like.
Okay, so for starters, fusion is incredibly clean.
Nice.
Unlike burning fossil fuels, fusion reactions don't produce greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change.
So a major win for the environment.
Yes, definitely. And there's no long-lived radioactive waste like you have with nuclear fission.
It's much cleaner.
Much cleaner.
Okay, what else?
Think back to that abundant fuel source we talked about.
Yeah.
Deuterium from water and lithium for breeding tritium.
Right.
We're talking about virtually inexhaustible resources.
That's a huge advantage.
It is.
It could revolutionize energy security.
Exactly.
And potentially solve the global energy crisis, especially since deuterium is found in seawater
Yeah.
all over the world.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
That means countries wouldn't have to rely on importing fossil fuels, potentially reshaping global power dynamics.
Wow, that's a really insightful point.
Thank you.
I hadn't thought about it in those terms before.
It's an interesting angle.
Okay, so it's clean, abundant, and has the potential to completely change the geopolitical landscape.
It does.
Anything else?
Fusion is also inherently safer than fission.
Okay,
A runaway reaction like what happened at Chernobyl is impossible with fusion.
that's good.
If the conditions aren't perfect, the reaction simply stops.
Wow.
Plus, the waste from fusion is orders of magnitude less than fission,
Wow.
and the byproducts decay much faster.
Okay, so it's clean, abundant, safe, and has the potential to change the world as we know it.
It really does.
Sounds almost too good to be true.
I know, it's exciting stuff.
But I'm guessing there are still some challenges to overcome before we have fusion power plants popping up everywhere, right?
You're exactly right. It's important to be realistic about the hurdles that remain on the fusion frontier, and
Okay.
thankfully your sources don't shy away from these challenges.
All right, let's dive into those challenges then.
Okay.
What are the biggest obstacles standing between us and a fusion-powered future?
One of the most significant challenges is consistently achieving that net energy gain we discussed earlier.
Right.
While NIF did it momentarily, we need reactors that can produce more energy than they consume over sustained periods,
I see.
not just in short bursts.
So it's not enough to just create fusion. We need to
Yeah.
create it efficiently and keep it going.
Exactly.
What else makes this so tricky?
Then there's the issue of plasma instability.
Oh, right.
Remember those hot energetic particles we talked about?
Yeah.
They're incredibly difficult to control.
Oh, I bet.
Even tiny fluctuations can disrupt the reaction.
Mm.
Imagine trying to herd cats, only much, much harder because these cats are invisible and moving at incredible speeds.
So it's like trying to bottle lightning or maybe herd lightning cats.
Haha. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, besides containing these lightning cats, what other challenges are there?
Material science is another big one.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We need materials that can withstand the extreme temperatures and radiation inside a fusion reactor.
Makes sense.
Without degrading too quickly, we're talking about conditions far more extreme than anything we encounter in everyday life.
That definitely pushes the boundaries of material science.
It does.
Is there anything else we need to figure out?
Efficiently breeding and handling tritium, which, as you'll recall, is radioactive, is another ongoing challenge.
Right.
We need to be able to produce enough tritium to fuel the reactions while also ensuring that it's managed safely and sustainably.
So while we've made incredible strides in fusion research, we still have a lot of work to do before it becomes a reality.
We do, but the progress is undeniable.
It is.
And the potential benefits are so immense that the effort is absolutely worth it.
I couldn't agree more. This has been an incredible overview of fusion so far, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
We've gone from the basic science to the challenges and potential rewards.
We've only just scratched the surface.
It feels like it.
But hopefully this is giving you, our listener, a solid foundation for understanding this complex and exciting technology.
And that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into nuclear fusion.
Great.
What's coming up next in part 2?
When we come back, we'll delve deeper into the different types of fusion reactions, the technologies being developed to achieve them, and the key players driving this incredible field forward.
It sounds like we have a lot more to explore.
We do.
So don't go anywhere. We'll be back with part 2 shortly.
See you then.
Welcome back to our deep dive into nuclear fusion. In the last part, we laid the groundwork exploring what fusion is, why it's so exciting, and some of the big challenges we face.
It was a good start.
Now we're ready to get into the nitty-gritty.
All right, let's do it.
Let's delve into the different types of fusion reactions that researchers are exploring.
Okay.
Because, it's not all just smash hydrogen together and boom, energy.
Uh-huh. Right.
There's a lot more nuance to it.
There is.
And from what I've gathered from these materials you sent, there are different ways to achieve fusion, each with its own pros and cons.
That's right.
I'm especially curious about the deuterium-tritium fusion, or DT fusion, that everyone seems to be talking about.
Yeah, DT fusion is definitely the most commonly discussed reaction.
Okay.
And for good reason. It offers a good balance between energy output and the technological challenges of achieving and sustaining the
So
reaction.
it's the most practical for now.
I think so.
But I'm curious, why is DT the front runner if our sun doesn't even use it?
Mm,
I remember from the last part that the sun uses a different process.
good catch. You're right. I try.
The sun primarily uses the proton chain reaction,
Uh-huh.
which is a much slower process.
Okay.
DT fusion, while not happening naturally on large scale here on Earth,
Right.
is much more achievable with our current technology.
So no room temperature fusion just yet.
Not yet.
Okay. So with DT fusion, we're fusing deuterium and tritium releasing energy.
Yes.
And what else comes out of that reaction?
Besides the energy, the reaction produces helium, which is harmless,
Okay.
and a neutron.
A neutron.
Yep.
Now, neutrons have a bit of a reputation, don't they?
They do.
Are they a problem in this context?
That's an important question, and yes, it can be.
Okay.
Neutrons are highly penetrating and can cause damage to the reactor materials over time. It's one of the engineering challenges that researchers are working on.
So while fusion is much cleaner than fission, it's not completely without its waste challenges.
That's true.
I guess there's no such thing as a perfectly clean energy source, is there?
Probably not. But is there anything else we can do to minimize the neutron issue?
One thing researchers are looking at is using different materials in the reactor walls
Okay.
that can withstand neutron bombardment more effectively.
Interesting.
They're also exploring different types of fusion reactions like deuterium or DD fusion.
Oh, that's right. I remember seeing that.
Yeah,
So DD fusion uses 2 deuteriums instead of deuterium and tritium.
exactly.
What's the advantage there?
The main appeal of DD fusion is that we wouldn't need tritium at all.
Oh, wow.
Remember, deuterium is even more abundant than tritium.
Right.
We can get it straight from seawater.
So even more limitless fuel, potentially less radioactive byproducts.
That's the idea.
That sounds fantastic. I have to ask, what's the catch?
Haha. There's always a catch.
There's always a catch, right?
You're right. There's always a trade-off.
Uh-oh.
The catch with DD fusion is that it requires significantly higher temperatures and pressures to get going.
Okay.
Much higher than even DD fusion.
So it's a lot more technologically demanding,
It is.
even though it had those advantages.
Yeah, that's a big hurdle.
I guess that's why DT is still the front runner for now.
I think so.
Are there any other, even more futuristic types of fusion reactions being investigated?
There are. You mentioned proton-boron fusion earlier.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That's the one that supposedly produces almost no neutrons, right?
that's right.
No material damage. That sounds like the holy grail of fusion.
It does sound ideal, and it definitely has researchers excited.
I bet.
But it's not without its challenges.
Of course.
Proton-boron fusion requires astronomically high temperatures, even higher than DD fusion.
Oh, wow.
We're talking billions of degrees Celsius.
Okay, so that one is definitely further out on the horizon.
Yeah,
But it's amazing that researchers are exploring all these possibilities.
it is.
I guess this just shows how much potential there is in fusion.
Absolutely. It highlights the incredible amount of research and ingenuity happening in this field.
Yeah.
Speaking of research, let's switch gears and talk about how we actually achieve those extreme conditions here on Earth, which is no easy feat. I mean, we can't exactly build a star in a lab, can we?
Not yet, anyway.
Uh-huh.
But you're right. We need to create those conditions artificially.
Who too?
And from what I've learned so far, the two main approaches being explored are magnetic confinement fusion, or MCF,
Yes,
and inertial confinement fusion, or ICF.
you got it. And both approaches have their own unique challenges and advantages, as your sources point out.
Makes sense.
Let's start with MCF.
Okay.
Since we already touched on those massive donut-shaped Tokamak reactors,
Those tokamaks are really impressive feats of engineering.
they are incredible.
They use powerful magnetic fields to confine the plasma and prevent it from touching the reactor walls, right?
Exactly. And remember that ITER project we talked about?
Yes.
That's the biggest tokamak being built. And
Yeah.
It's a massive international collaboration aiming to prove that fusion can be a viable energy source on a large scale.
It's amazing.
But tokamaks aren't the only game in town when it comes to MCF.
That's right. There are also those stellarators with the more complex, twisted magnetic fields.
Yes, exactly.
If tokamaks are like holding a basketball with your hands,
Right.
stellarators are like using a complex web of strings, right?
A good analogy.
What's the thinking behind these different designs?
It all comes down to plasma stability and confinement time.
Okay.
Different magnetic field configurations have their pros and cons, and researchers are constantly experimenting and refining these designs to optimize performance.
Right.
Stellarators, for instance, might offer better plasma stability in the long run, even though they're more complex to build.
It's fascinating how much ingenuity and creativity goes into designing these reactors.
It really is.
It's like they're pushing the boundaries of physics and engineering at the same time.
Absolutely. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have inertial confinement fusion,
Right.
which, as you'll recall, uses lasers or ion beams to implode those tiny fuel pellets.
Right, like a tiny little supernova.
Exactly. It's a completely different approach to achieving fusion conditions.
We talked about NIF achieving that breakthrough with lasers using that approach.
Yes.
Are there any other notable ICF projects out there?
There are several. For example, the Laser Megajoule, or LMJ, in France,
Wow.
is another major laser facility dedicated to fusion research.
Cool.
It uses similar principles to NIF,
Okay.
but with a different laser configuration.
So both MCF and ICF are making significant progress, each with its own unique strengths and challenges.
They are.
It's exciting to see these different approaches pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
I agree.
But it's not just these massive international projects driving the fusion field forward, is it?
You're right. There's a growing private sector involvement in fusion research,
That's really cool.
which is incredibly exciting. Your sources mentioned a few companies like Tokamak Energy, Helion Energy, and Commonwealth Fusion Systems.
Yes, those are some of the companies that are really pushing the envelope.
They are.
I'm particularly intrigued by the idea of compact fusion reactors that some of these companies are developing.
Yeah, me too.
What's the thinking behind that approach?
The idea behind compact fusion is to create smaller, more modular reactors,
Okay,
which could potentially reduce costs and speed up deployment.
I see.
Think of it as trying to make fusion more accessible and affordable.
Yeah.
Perhaps even something that could be used on a smaller scale, like for powering individual communities or industries.
So it's about making fusion more practical and less reliant on these huge, expensive mega projects.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned something earlier called magnetized target fusion,
Right.
which I haven't had a chance to delve into yet.
Sure.
How does that fit into all of this?
Magnetized target fusion, or MTF, is a fascinating hybrid approach
A hybrid?
that combines elements of both MCF and ICF. It uses a magnetic field to initially confine the plasma,
Okay.
but then uses a rapid compression technique similar to what's done in ICF to achieve fusion conditions.
So it's like taking the best of both worlds in a way.
Exactly. It's a really clever idea.
It sounds like there's a real diversity of thought and innovation in the fusion field,
There is.
which is really encouraging.
It is one of the things that makes this field so exciting.
Right. It's important to remember those challenges we talked about earlier.
Yeah, of course.
Achieving net energy gain, controlling plasma instability, finding durable materials, managing tritium. These are all hurdles that still need to be cleared.
Absolutely. But with continued research collaboration and ingenuity, there's a growing belief that these challenges can be overcome.
Well, this deeper dive into the different types of reactions, the various approaches being taken, and the key players in the field has been incredibly enlightening.
Glad to hear it.
I feel like I have a much better grasp of what's happening on the fusion frontier.
That's great.
It's such a dynamic and rapidly evolving field,
It really is.
and we've only just begun to explore its potential impact on the world.
Which brings us perfectly to our next segment.
Okay.
When we return for part 3,
Yes.
we'll take a look at the broader implications of fusion.
Right.
What it could mean for the future of energy, the environment, and even space exploration.
It sounds like we have a lot more to explore.
We do stay tuned for the final chapter of our fusion deep dive.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into nuclear fusion.
It's been a great deep dive so far.
It really has.
Yeah.
We've explored the science, the challenges, and the incredible variety of approaches being pursued to make fusion a reality.
Lots of exciting progress.
Yeah, and now it's time to really let our imaginations run wild.
Let's do it.
It's time to step back and look at the bigger picture. What could a fusion-powered future actually look like? What would it mean for you, our listener, and for the world?
That's a big question, isn't it?
It is, and it's what I'm most excited to talk about. We've touched on some of the potential benefits throughout this deep dive,
We have.
but I think it's worth delving deeper into those possibilities.
I agree. Let's explore those.
Okay, so one of the most profound impacts of fusion
Right.
would be on the global energy landscape.
It would change everything.
We're talking about a potential paradigm shift in how we power our planet.
Exactly. A total transformation.
You know, when I think about the future of energy, it often feels like a tug of war between our reliance on fossil fuels and the promise of renewables.
I feel that.
But fusion seems to offer a different path altogether.
It does. It's a whole new game.
Exactly. Fusion could be the key to a clean energy future that doesn't force us to choose between reliability and sustainability.
It's the dream, isn't it?
Right now, we rely heavily on fossil fuels,
Yeah,
which are finite and contribute to climate change.
of course.
And while renewable sources like solar and wind are growing rapidly,
They are.
they face challenges with intermittency and storage.
That's the biggest hurdle right now.
So where does fusion fit into this picture? Could it actually bridge that gap?
I think it could. Fusion could provide a clean and reliable baseload power source that complements renewables beautifully. Imagine a world where the majority of our electricity comes from a mix of fusion, solar, and wind.
It's a very compelling vision.
It is.
And it's not just about the environmental benefits either, right?
Right.
Earlier, you mentioned how fusion could reshape the geopolitical landscape.
Yeah.
It's not something we usually think about when we talk about energy, but it makes sense.
It's a huge factor. Access to energy resources is often a source of conflict and tension around the world.
It's true.
With fusion, countries could become more energy independent,
That's right.
relying on a fuel source that's available to everyone.
Everyone.
Remember that deuterium in seawater we talked about?
That's right. No more fighting over oil fields or gas pipelines. It's amazing to think about how fusion could change the world in ways that go far beyond simply keeping the lights on.
It's a game changer.
And there's another aspect of fusion that often gets people really excited, its potential for economic growth.
Yeah, who doesn't love economic growth?
A fusion-powered economy would create countless new jobs and industries.
It would be a boom,
We're talking about everything from manufacturing fusion reactors
right?
to developing new materials and technologies to harness this powerful energy source. It could be a major engine for innovation and prosperity.
Absolutely. Fusion is a game changer, not just for energy, but for the entire technological landscape. It's like opening up a whole new frontier of possibilities.
You know, we can't talk about pushing boundaries without mentioning space exploration.
Ah, space, the final frontier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You included some fascinating articles about fusion's potential role in space travel.
It's a natural fit.
Do you think those sci-fi movies with spaceships powered by fusion could actually become a reality?
I don't think it's a question of if, but when.
Wow.
Fusion propulsion systems could enable much faster and more efficient space travel, making it possible to explore our solar system and beyond in ways we can only dream of right now.
It's mind-boggling. Just imagine cutting down travel times to Mars, or
Right.
even venturing beyond our solar system, all thanks to fusion.
The possibilities are
It
endless.
would completely change our understanding of what's possible in space.
Think about it, the vast distances of space would become more manageable with fusion-powered spacecraft.
Right.
We could establish outposts on other planets, mine asteroids for resources, and truly become a spacefaring civilization.
And it's not just about transportation, right?
Right.
Fusion could also provide power for long-duration space missions,
Yes.
even for establishing colonies on other planets. A compact fusion reactor could be the heart of a Martian base, providing a reliable and sustainable energy source for those brave pioneers.
It's an incredible thought, isn't it? Fusion could not only transform life on Earth, but also allow us to expand our reach into the cosmos. It's a testament to human ingenuity and our drive to explore the unknown. It's not just about solving our energy needs, it's about pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and our place in the universe.
Why, I think you've officially blown my mind.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, this has been an amazing journey, wouldn't you say?
It really has.
We've covered so much ground, from the basic science of fusion to its potential impact on energy, the environment, geopolitics, and even space travel.
You've gone deep.
We have, and I think
Yeah.
we've done a good job of really highlighting those key takeaways from all those sources that you sent over.
I think so too.
We've explored the different perspectives on fusion and really tried to present a balanced view of this complex and exciting technology.
And we've made it clear that we're not endorsing any particular viewpoint, just trying to give our listener a comprehensive overview of what's out there.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, we want you, our listener, to come to your own conclusions about fusion.
That's right. It's your future.
This deep dive has been inspiring, eye-opening, and honestly a little bit humbling.
I agree.
It's a reminder that even the most challenging scientific endeavors are within our grasp if we work together and dare to dream big.
And maybe someday we'll look back at this moment as the dawn of the fusion age.
That's a perfect note to end on. A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us and for guiding us through this fascinating world.
The pleasure was all mine. I'm always happy to talk about the wonders of fusion.
And to you, our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the amazing possibilities of nuclear fusion. It's a field that's full of challenges, but also full of hope for a brighter future. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that spark of curiosity burning bright.